ഇന്ന് പ്രശസ്ത ചരിത്രകാരൻ പ്രൊഫസർ എസ് ഇർഫാൻ ഹബീബുമായുള്ള അഭിമുഖം കേൾക്കാം. അവതരണം Dr.T ഷിഹാബുദ്ദീൻ, അസിസ്റ്റന്റ് പ്രൊഫസർ, സ്കൂൾ ഓഫ് ഡിസ്റ്റൻസ് എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ.
നമസ്കാരം. ഇന്ന് നമ്മളോടൊപ്പമുള്ളത് ഡൽഹി നിസ്റ്റാഡ്സിലും അതിനെ തുടർന്ന് നീപ്പയിലും പ്രൊഫസറും മൗലാന ആസാദ് ചെയറും ഒക്കെ ആയിരുന്ന പ്രൊഫസർ എസ് ഇർഫാൻ ഹബീബാണ്. ഇന്ത്യൻ സയൻസ് ചരിത്രകാരന്മാരിൽ അദ്വിതീയനായ പ്രൊഫസർ എസ് ഇർഫാൻ ഹബീബിനെ റേഡിയോ സിയുവിൻ്റെ ശ്രോതാക്കൾക്കും കാലിക്കറ്റ് യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റിയിലെ എല്ലാ അംഗങ്ങൾക്കും വേണ്ടി ഞാൻ സ്വാഗതം ചെയ്യുന്നു. സർ, ഓൺ ബിഹാഫ് ഓഫ് ദി എൻറ്റയർ കാലിക്കറ്റ് യൂണിവേഴ്സിറ്റി കമ്മ്യൂണിറ്റി and the listeners of Radio CU, I wish you a warm welcome.
Thank you.
I think we can start from your earlier research, that is the revolutionary aspects of Indian nationalism. Early decades of the 20th century witnessed several revolutionary movements for getting rid of the exploitative social political system all over the world. In India, the revolutionaries had to fight at the two fronts. One, against the remnants of our caste-ridden, discriminatory, feudal past. And at the same time, we have to fight the European colonialism. But this movement is found losing its voice in the national movement. What happened to this movement actually?
I don't think it lost its voice. It remained strongly present in different ways.
Okay.
Like for example, Bhagat Singh's own decade of 1920s and his Naujawan Bharat Sabha and his activities, the way he inspired the youth through his sacrifice, etc., remained part of the mainstream Congress struggle, because large number of youth who were part of the Congress Gandhian movements were inspired by Bhagat Singh and his life, because he invited all of them to join the struggle against the British, because he inspired them through his actions, through his ideology, through his sacrifice. So despite the fact that they disappeared very soon from the scene, but they left a mark which continued for quite some time to make an impact on Indian freedom struggle.
Your collaboration with Professor Dhruv Raina at NISTADS have given us a wonderful work on history of science. Along with introducing Nidamian idea of ecumenical science, the question raised by Nidam and his students on Chinese science, why did not scientific revolution take place in China? You have also posed a question towards the students of history in India. Why did not such a question emerge in India? Like a Nidamian question, why did not such a question emerge in India? Actually, what happened to Indian knowledge system?
You see, when Nidam raises this question about China, actually we have tried to answer it in our work. When scientific revolution takes place in Europe, we need to see that scientific revolution was not the only thing happening in Europe in those times. There was a huge change which was taking place, shift from feudalism to capitalism to mercantilism, was taking place. Scientific revolution was a part of it. So it was not in isolation that something like scientific revolution was happening. Scientific revolution was followed by technological evolution, industrial evolution. So all these things they were all packaged. Now, something like this was impossible to imagine in India. In India, science, modern science, was transplanted on the traditional knowledge base. There was no change at ground level. Feudal system remained intact. Our old traditional methods, ways remained intact. We could still find a Mercedes and a bullock cart on the road, while Europe changed completely, because they restructured their society, their science, their knowledge system. Everything was changed. Their ways of doing business, everything was changed. And then it was followed by colonialism, because the expansion of Europe and its production activities, its production methods, needed a market, needed resources for which they had to expand. That's why they came to India, they went to Africa, they went to different parts of the world. So scientific revolution, mercantilism, etc. were followed by colonization. So we missed all these phases. We just it didn't happen here. So imagining a scientific revolution in isolation makes no sense.
How far our caste system checked as a hindrance in the development of science in India?
That's what I'm saying. We had caste system. We could not do away with it. That's what I'm saying. The traditional methods, traditional way of life, the old feudal system, caste was part of it. So we couldn't challenge it. We could question it. We couldn't eliminate it. No. So we had a section of population which was deprived of engagement with knowledge production. They were deprived of so many things. Almost 70% population was totally out of it, out of any intellectual enterprise. So when 70% population is out of it, and then women were out of it in any case till late. So we already had a very enclaved society where only a section had a privilege to engage with the production of knowledge, whether it is scientific knowledge or any other knowledge. So these were strong sort of features of our social system, our society, our polity, which deprived us of so many things, including science and scientific production.
The new ideas of nationalism, socialism, democracy, etc. could awaken India against exploitative past and colonialism. But recently, an ultra-nationalistic or to say jingoistic mobilization has begun to shake our pride before the people abroad. What we saw in Chinnaswamy Stadium, Bengaluru last day was the last of this episode. Where did we actually fail?
You see, what is happening today in India is part of the global right-wing upsurge. So we are not alone facing all this. And I am not saying that we should not be bothered about it. Of course we should be bothered about it, and we should fight. And there are people who are fighting it. We are finding problems with that. But globally, we can see that right-wing is on the upswing. You go to European countries, you go to South America, go to America itself, and the Middle Eastern countries. In any case, they had not been greatly progressive countries in any case. So this right-wing upsurge is a global thing. Now, I hope it's a passing phase, and people fight back and take their pluralist values, democratic values back from these forces. And I hope this happens fast so that we don't really damage our society very much, irreparably. And I can talk about India. Now a large number of people are fighting these forces. Unfortunately, a huge section of our own population have been co-opted into this belief that we are majority of us, and majority, I say, majority of the people who belong to the majoritarian religion are being persecuted, are at the receiving end. This is a very unique feature of these fascist upsurges everywhere. They instill a feeling of a complex into you, which they use politically to strengthen themselves. And this is what is happening here. That people are being told that you are the sufferers. A small minority is actually making you suffer in your own country. You are insulted, your religion is insulted. So that leads to a very ultra, as you said, jingoistic feeling among people. Religion is equated with nationalism, as if you defend your faith, you defend your nation. So this parity between religion and nation and nationalism is misplaced. It's not like this all over the world, if you see. But these are all very, very strong forces which need to be countered, need to be told that you are wrong.
In your recent work on Maulana Abul Kalam Azad, Maulana Azad A Life, you have mentioned that though our nationalist leaders were scholars in their respective religion, for example, Azad himself, they did never wish to be known as leaders of a particular community, to say Muslim leaders, etc. It was quite interesting for me. I think we have much to learn from them. Can we briefly explain the process of making these leaders and making of their movement?
You see, if we look at the period in which Maulana Azad did whatever he did, that period was a phase where most of the leaders were part of composite India, where they had their enemy in front of them. The British colonial rule was the target. Many of them felt that if you have to fight the British, you have to be together, and religion will have to take the back seat. But despite that, you had forces from both sides, Hinduism as well as Islam, Muslim forces, which were divisive. Maulana Azad wrote in one of his articles somewhere that I don't understand why Hindu Mahasabha had to raise its head and talk about the Hindu cause. I can understand the Muslim League because they want a nation in the name of religion. So that is understandable, and we are fighting them. But why the Hindu Mahasabha is doing something which is weakening our nationalism? Because their rise leads to the weakening of nationalism. So he realized it, that this is something which, and later on we find that Hindu Mahasabha was actually collaborating with the British. And Maulana was puzzled. Why should these forces join hands with the British? So he could explain the communal agenda of the Muslim League. It was very clear. But puzzling thing was that why Hindu forces were trying to do this exactly the same thing which the Muslim League was doing, saying, almost agreeing with Jinnah that Muslims and Hindus are two nations. So there were people who were doing this, but a majority of leaders knew that we all have to be together. There were lots of Maulana Azad was not alone. Generally, and I have questioned this in my book also, that Maulana Azad derived his strength from a large number of Muslims who were with him. Whole Darul Uloom Deoband supported him. Allah Bakhsh Samru was a great leader of Sindh, Chief Minister of Sindh in those times. He was called Prime Minister in those days. He was with him. In 1940, a huge conference was organized in Delhi, Azad Muslim Conference, which questioned Muslim League's demand for Pakistan. And more than 1 lakh people gathered, which is amazing in those times. So there were forces from among the Muslim community who questioned Muslim League and its feudal and very professional, limited professional base. Those who feared that once the British go, they will lose their business, they will lose their jobs. And they were instilling this fear among Muslims. And they did it quite successfully, because they kept harping that you will be losers, so you better be with us.
The presence of Islamists, including Maududism, can be seen during the early 20th century in India, just like Hindutva forces. They did not find colonialism as the chief enemy. What was the relationship between these right-wing forces and the people of India?
A large number of people did not agree with them, and that is the reason why they were not so strong during those times. They had their own support base, but a large number of Muslims believed that what they are saying is not really their future. They need to be more inclusive, they need to fight together with others, and India need to be independent. And religion is not really the sole criterion when it comes to the fight against the British. But there were sections among Hindus and Muslims who had their own agenda, and they continued to play around with that idea till we achieved independence in 1947. And when India became independent, these forces who wanted a Muslim Pakistan declared themselves Islamic nation. In India, same forces, communal forces led by Hindu Mahasabha in those times, put pressure on Indian leaders like Nehru, Patel and Azad and everybody else, that if Pakistan can become an Islamic nation, why can't we become a Hindu nation? Which was rejected by Nehru and Patel and everybody else. They said, if we do it, then what is the difference between Muslim League and us? Congress was different from Muslim League because we fought on a combined platform. We didn't fight for a Hindu nation against the British. We fought for India, which was inclusive of all communities and castes.
In your work on Jihad or Ijtihad, religious orthodoxy and modern science in contemporary Islam, you have explained the intellectual history of Islam. It has been noted that Islam during the early period favored critical enquiries very much. But later on, things were pathetically inverted. Can you briefly explain the intellectual trajectory of Islam?
You see, in the beginning, early few centuries, till the Baitul Hikmah, the House of Wisdom during the Abbasid period, there was a new awakening, because if you look at Islam, and M.N. Roy, our great communist leader, in his beautiful little book called Historical Role of Islam, it was published in 1938-39, he, in one chapter, the chapter is, he very clearly pointed out, and I'm saying this because he was a communist leader, he was not a Muslim leader or somebody who was not ideology driven. He was a man with an ideology. And he very clearly said that Islam was a modernist movement, which means that Islam came up in the world to modernize society. So it had progressive ideas. It had open invitation to expand the horizons of knowledge, whether scientific knowledge or otherwise, fight against the corrupt social evils in the society, which were there in the Arab world where it grew up. So all that one can see in the beginning. Now it continued for almost 4 centuries. Baitul Hikmah, House of Wisdom, is formed by Abbasid caliphs in Baghdad. Look at the character of this Baitul Hikmah. Baitul Hikmah was headed by a Christian Arab, Hunayn ibn Ishaq. Its translation bureau is headed by Zabit ibn Qurra, who is again a Christian. Now, they are producing science in Islamic civilization, though they are Christians. And they are being allowed by the Khalifas of the time. Those Khalifas had no hesitation in engaging with the Christian scholars. So, altogether, they were producing a knowledge which was modern in those times, which was an advance over previous knowledge. There were Buddhist scholars from India who were also part of it. So we have this whole knowledge base from all over, including Greek knowledge, etc., put together, translated, and produced a fresh knowledge which became a foothold, a sort of stepping stone for the European scientific revolution, as you said. And we have said it in our work that European scientific revolution deprived these societies, including India. India was not directly involved with Europe, but Arab world was a colony almost next to Europe. So they had direct contact. So most of the knowledge, even from India, was transferred to Europe through the Arab mediation. But the role which all these knowledges played were deprived to them, because European scientific revolution was preceded by or followed by the colonization. Colonization wanted all non-Euro-American societies to be declared dark societies with no knowledge at all. Only then justification of colonialism can be had. So and that was in a very organized way, in a Eurocentric way, carried out. So that need to be. That's what I try to do in this book as well. That Islam was deprived of its credit. India was deprived, but that doesn't mean that you start finding your own idea of Islamic science. There is nothing called Islamic science. There is science in Islamic civilization. There is like science in Chinese civilization, as Nizam called it. It was not Chinese science. They are two different things. Science is one, knowledge is one. So that's what I'm trying to do in this book. to find out and see how one can explain the development of science, and how later on, the question you raised, how this growth of scientific knowledge, which remained very very palpable in the few centuries, disappeared. For which many answers people have given. And one of the answers is that the ulama within Islam became jittery because they felt that because Islam didn't come with a church. There was no clergy, there was no church in Islam. Or the ulama, the birth of these mullahs and ulamas is much later. And when they appear in defense of Islam, that we have to take control so that not everybody can come and participate and say whatever he or she wants to say. When this happens, then there comes about a change where participation of people in the production of knowledge, etc., almost becomes restricted. Large number of do's and don'ts are introduced which are not there in Islam in early centuries. And they were all introduced by the ulama. Even Shariat comes later. Shariat is not part of coterminous with Quran. It comes in later. So all these developments happened to deprive Islam or these ulamas, the Maulvis. They wanted to deprive people and their participation, and kept everything under check and control. And over the century, because it didn't happen overnight, it happened over several decades and centuries. And gradually, things changed so badly that any intervention other than Quranic intervention became extraneous. And people started seeing science also as part of Quran, which is not a fact. Quran was not a book of science. Quran was a book of inspiration to pursue knowledge as far as possible.
Both colonial historians and post-colonial historians blame science to be Western, something West Europe, a product of Western Europe. And at the same time, your introduction of ecumenical science. Science is ecumenical, not European or something. I think it is more relevant in the contemporary society.
Yeah.
So, can you please explain the ecumenical science?
Ecumenical, it was called ecumenical science by Needham, and we also try to pursue that. The idea is that if you look at the world is porous. No one society can claim exclusive control over production of any knowledge for that matter. Because the world is porous, ideas keep moving from one society to another. When you have a political control, you are politically powerful, then you want to claim everything for yourself, like Europe did. There was a phase when Europe was under control of the whole of the world, so through colonization. French, Dutch, English, German, all these countries had some control or the other in most parts of the world. Now they defined who is the producer of knowledge and who is the consumer of knowledge. So when the rest of the world becomes consumer of what they produce in terms of ideas or artifacts or whatever, then it becomes very clear that one little world is the producer of ideas and the rest of the world is just a consumer. So this is something wrong. This is something which Needham tried to question. We also tried to raise it in a small way, that whatever has happened in a participative manner. A section has been deprived of its role. That role should be given to them. Those people should be identified who all had been participants, which makes it ecumenical science, which makes it participative science, a participative knowledge production. So that is the truth. Otherwise, rest of the things are very politically motivated.
So you have spent much time with us, and it was a thought-provoking deliberation, and it was quite fruitful as a student of history I am concerned. On behalf of the entire university community, people of Kerala, and the entire listeners of Radio CU. I acknowledge our gratitude towards you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Talk on. Talk on.
ടോക്ക് ഓണിൽ ഇതുവരെ പ്രശസ്ത ചരിത്രകാരൻ പ്രൊഫസർ എസ് ഇർഫാൻ ഹബീബുമായുള്ള അഭിമുഖമാണ് കേട്ടത്. അവതരണം ഡോക്ടർ ടി പി ഷിഹാബുദ്ദീൻ, അസിസ്റ്റന്റ് പ്രൊഫസർ, സ്കൂൾ ഓഫ് ഡിസ്റ്റൻസ് എഡ്യൂക്കേഷൻ.